Right.
Hello and welcome to the Diamond League Clash of the Captains here, where we are going to have Cat and DT go at each other, and I'm joined by Blues.
Hello.
Alright, I'm going to just pop the link down in so people know I'm live. Let's see, switch over to server, small.
Yeah.
Alright. So, even in our casting, we're going to have fairness, because Blues, I believe you're on Einhorns,
Yes, I am.
and I am a Phoenix, so we even have caster balance on this. We're going for all sorts of, 1v1. The meta 1v1 and the real 1v1.
Well, in casting, I don't believe I'll be much of a match. Sorry, it's a strange thing to say right away.
Well, either way, I'm sure you will have better expert analysis than I do.
That is to be seen.
So it looks looks like Cat and DT are going to do 2 games here. So either it'll be a clean sweep by 1 or a 1-1, and things will remain balanced.
Right. What do the point standings look like at the moment? I want to say, okay.
Last I checked, they were even, but that is definitely wrong. Somehow that window closed on my browser, so I don't even know what the point totals are.
So teams were even before the match between Senzar and DT that just concluded, which gave the Phoenixes 4.5 extra points. And that is the margin.
Yeah, well, with this, even if Cat double wins, Phoenix, I think, will still be half a point ahead.
Indeed. If Cat loses the first game, then handicaps will come into play.
And I believe that's
point
I get to choose what whirl or what planetary or celestial body. There we go, the correct term, celestial body. We jump in on.
Yeah, we like to make this extra confusing with a moon, 2 moons, a planet, and little not either of those.
So yeah, so Mars definitely planet, Io moon, Ceres moon, and Europa is also a moon. It's all a lot of moons.
Right.
Well, it doesn't contradict off-world. It's still off-world, just completely off-world.
All sorts of worlds were off.
Oh.
Alright.
But that brings some interesting things into play, and one of the things is for some of my other fun work, we were actually looking at whether asteroid mining would be worth it. And it turns out it's not. Because if you put a free pile of, I believe it was cocaine, which is the most expensive substance per weight unit in the world, and you made it completely free, it would not be worth it to go to the moon, grab as much as you want, and come back and sell it on Earth.
Right, yeah. And, I mean, that's all with existing technology.
True. But the big thing is getting up and getting down. So, possibly, doing something with that material while in space, if we have better life support capabilities, would be a very different story.
Yeah, like anything similar to what's actually going on in Offworld is so far fetched at the moment.
Yes. Yeah. Offworld assumes a certain, I don't know, century or two of technological advance from where we are.
I believe the year it's set in is 21 something or other. Feels like something I should know, but it's been too long since I looked that up.
Let's see, and DT is still changing its name, is apparently what I'm reading about. So we're waiting for that. Let's see. Oh, why not build a space elevator? Am I getting in my chat? Okay. So, building a space elevator comes with its own set of challenges. Namely, that you have to be able to create a stable zone around the shaft of the elevator. Because one snap in the middle of it, one storm breaking something, and that's a long falling cable at a lot of speed doing a lot of damage. So there's other challenges with space elevators, just besides the structural engineering challenge of building one in the first place. So it would be nice if we could figure out how to get a space elevator work and how to safely keep it up. Because a failure on that could be really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Thus the NASA motto, redundancy is good, redundancy is good, redundancy is good. But interestingly, one of the looks like we're all ready. Blues, you ready?
Yep.
Alrighty, I will start the countdown. And now we actually get to talk about the game. Which right now for me is a beautiful loading screen.
I have a Nomad loading screen appropriately.
I have an expansive one, which I have to say the board just looks like a bunch of kids. I get that that's intentional.
This map is dreadful.
This map is completely full of pain. Completely full of pain.
There aren't even nomads to save us.
Yeah.
So it looks like we're probably going to end up with some robots. Iron and aluminum are just really...
Well, Cat's just like, well, I'm taking all the iron and blocking out that. There we get an expansive.
Some nice high iron.
Yeah.
So he can work with it.
And since everything is all around the place, the extra shipping won't be bad. Or shipping discount.
Big advantage to Cat is that she's right near some pretty good silicon and carbon. As long as she gets there before the colony eats those tiles.
Because that's the carbon. And I think since she just upgraded, she'll probably maybe spare a tile for the carbon, because that can still be turned into early power.
Right. Be a good place for a third steel mill there. Lose a bunch of adjacency, but I guess... Okay. Going to iron steel on the other side instead values the resiliency against this EMP, which makes a lot of sense in a 1v1. Is a bit of a risk, but maybe fine.
And this is a chems colony, so carbon is going to be uber critical.
Right. Both players are likely to be able to get some carbon DTS this low right next to him. There's carbon scrubbing always available, but whoever misses out on some of that might have some issues with this nuke on the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Finally getting up to HQ level 2, just a lot slower with the 111 start. Having to ship in the iron and the aluminum slows things down a lot.
It does. But, what you gonna do on this map? You gotta do something.
Yeah, there wasn't a better choice. Just kind of shows the power of cat founding first.
Now, what could... Oh, yeah. But I think she went with considerably more debt. Yeah. She's already got 50k in debt, while DeathTacticus just has over 5k. So...
Right. DT also just being the first into a money-making market, grabbing that water and these reactors. HQ2 as an expansive founding second, you have a lot of claims to work with. This makes it easier to make this sort of move.
And DT is also in a fun spot for an early patent to help his power of geothermal borehole.
Cat theoretically also has that option. That is less interesting for her though, because DT just has so many tiles that could be adjacent to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cat instead moving into some condensers.
Well, there's water nearby, so I don't know about the value of those condensers versus the water pumps always pumping. I suppose they're immune to the underground nukes.
There's that, and I think there's a lot of value in potentially being able to transition those into wind turbines, which might be a thing before too long.
Yeah, because that power price is creeping up.
The geothermal tile is claimed. That's going to be a bit slow to get online. She might end up getting some supplemental power over there. Probably depends in part on what DT does. If he goes into a bunch of power himself as well, when the power market starts crashing, then that can be skipped.
Yeah. So the question is how is DT going to make his first power? I mean, he could... There's even some tiles for him to throw down some wind turbines just temporarily, and they're right by his base, so you could change them out. Since carbon is decently cheap at the moment.
He might be a bit concerned about moving into turbines because he has not collected any carbon while Cat has, so that would just be boosting the price for her. But that's...
Well, for those of you who weren't in power, congratulations! There's increased prices everywhere.
Interesting that DT went for a farther away geotherm first, not claiming the one near him yet.
Maybe he's hoping it won't be two of them he went away from. That feels a little weird.
Yes, for sure.
Oh, because he's going to claim all three.
It's an interesting move.
You can't black market them all, I think is the name of this move.
Right, but it also does make it so that, only one of those three is protected. Cat knows that. Having three instead of two or something makes it the odds just better that you can steal one of them safely. Cat has eventually moved into some power of her own. Well, some of the wind turbines we talked about.
And a geotherm.
To get that. Yeah.
And there's the mutiny.
Going for a bit of a safer mutiny, the last one to build, the one that was building slowly.
Now this is an interesting auction. Basically, the only, efficient silicon tile on this map.
Yeah. There are two warehouses at the colony, so glass should be pretty relevant long term as well. Mm-hmm. So having that is going to be really nice for DT.
Mm-hmm. And the dust storm is going to really hurt food and help wind turbines, which is a small boon for Cat, not a huge one, but a small one.
The hurting food part of it, I think, will be significantly painful to DT, but at the same time, he's also just ahead on cash at the moment, so he has some room to lose on that. far as Cat from this upgrade, she still needs 40 electronics, which is not all that close. She doesn't have any carbon stockpiled. There's no longer a second carbon tile for her to take.
Unless she gets a
Slant drilling.
Slant drilling. However, what could be kind of mean of DT, depending on if what he secures is throw a nuke down on that medium carbon. Slanting a trace is slanting a trace.
Right. Okay, so DT has moved it up to HQ4 first. He's moving it to some glass to go with his high silicon tile that he picked up. That should work out very nicely for him. Moving back into reactors seems like a pretty necessary thing to do to prepare to move into chems eventually. Doesn't
Especially
have the benefit of moving into just a single chem refinery the way Cat did.
He'll also be shipping, and the robot blob danger comes into effect.
Cat very much out of room in her little area now. The good news for Cat is that there are no magnetic storms or pirates, so there's definitely potential for her to use adjacency with their ice solar condensers or just put things on cliffs nearby. And shouldn't be terrible.
Virtual reality patent. I don't know how good pleasure is going to be here. With a robot and expanse of it kind of evens out.
Pretty much, yeah, middle of the line. Most of the tiles that Cat might have wanted to have a pleasure dome in near her are no longer good. They only have one adjacency. That last 2 adjacency tile has just been blocked by the colony. So 28k does feel like an overpay, but we'll see how that plays.
Well, she could, if she gets geothermal borehole, replace her geothermal plant with a pleasure dome, which will be really efficient as far as a pleasure dome goes.
That is fair. At this point, DT has these 3 geotherms down. If Cat can deny the geothermal borehole, he'll pretty much be producing a ton of power all game. If he doesn't manage the power price consistently, then you might be able to expect that stays low and kind of work off of just the borehole. But that is a risk for sure.
Yeah.
In any case, DT is going to be the first one to move into the patent lab. He's going to go for carbon scrubbing, which makes a lot of sense. Cat just not really in a position where she can afford to go patents quite yet.
Well, she is putting down a single adjacency pleasure dome down by the silicon mines.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. It is going to be a $177 pleasure dome. That is going to be a fair amount of income.
Well, since she won the virtual reality auction, she better do something with it.
That feels like a sunk cost fallacy. But yeah.
Well, with power being as cheap as it is, I mean,
that's fair.
I mean, it's her most profitable tile.
It also costs a fair amount to put down, though, and it's potentially opening up vulnerability in power. DT upgrading to HQ5 makes the pleasure dome much better, but he has also secured carbon scrubbing at this point. So this nuke onto the carbon, as nice as it may be, is not ultimately going to be all that impactful, whereas this mutiny onto the pleasure dome will be.
Yes, that is a good mutiny right there. And now a bit on a adrenaline boost.
Yep. Works quite nicely with that pleasure dome.
It does. Although
not have a goon squad, so that's not something he can afford to risk.
And he doesn't really want to necessarily leave a goon squad on there. Instead, just boosting the steel.
Mhm.
And food. Yeah, that's a lot of value for that boost right there.
Yeah. I think Kat's right now sensing that she is a fair bit behind. Her best bet is to get a big hit of money right away, try to get this majority buy done, but it's a real long shot.
Yeah. Mean.
Right. DT is going for nanotech as well, so that's not even something that you can try to force him to cancel.
The black market is online.
Well, if you throw down a EMP, that'll pause it.
Yeah. But
But
at this point, DT already has the cash to defend himself, and Kat sees that. She's selling out. She's going to hit 5. She's going to be solidly behind, and we'll have to see what her plan is to get back into things.
and her carbon just got nuked, so whatever that plan is, carbon is not going to be the way she does it.
No, it will not. Which means DT is just going to make a ton of money off of this chem pseudo monopoly. Would not be surprised to see a hacker array come down before long and try to exploit that some more.
Especially with the colony consuming it, it's not going to be hard to do.
Yeah,
But
this random shortage is also just really friendly to DT. Little extra money on the glass, which he's just been in control of.
Which the colony, yeah, which he is in the best. I mean, DT is just in the driver's seat here. I think Kat gets to avoid the majority buyout, but not much more.
Right. She's moving into a hacker array now, trying to find some way to stay in this game, but she needs a miracle at this point.
Because DT is also starting to move into an optimization center. And he was able to get a lot of the extra claims that have come out so far, so dealing with a huge claim advantage over the robot.
And realistically, Kat's not going to be able to do all that much optimization herself without being able to produce a significant amount of chemicals. It is just going to be painful.
Well, thankfully she got that superconductor, which is really valuable to her because that geotherm is now making 4 units of power, and with power prices rising, it's nice to have a very efficient tile.
That it is. Both players in a large amount of debt at the moment. So Kat has been surplusing carbon, doing what she can to keep that working.
And DT is now going into thinking machines, which the off-worlds aren't great, but gives him the option. And looking at the optimizations here, DT is optimizing chems, which is a good thing to optimize, considering the colony is just going to consume it.
Yep.
That's it. Hacking down carbon prices. Well, that is a way to keep your input costs down.
A pretty consistent stream of surpluses. It's okay. It's finally moving into an electronics shortage. That is one market where she does have an advantage that she can try to get working for her.
She's also optimizing it to try to put it to full advantage. Unfortunately for her, DT is moving into some electronics factories of his own.
Also unfortunate for Kat that her electronics production is just a pair of tiles. So that's just not going to produce all that much. Kat moving into a second hacker array, really just searching for something. While DT has finished the thinking machines, he does have this empty tile ready for an off-world to be built there. Off-world's not amazing right now, but they will just help secure things for him.
Oop, there came down a nuke on one of his water tiles.
Let's see. Slant drilling is still available, but it seems unlikely. Wait, DT does still have a patent lab? What? I don't think he does. That's just a hologram.
Core samples could be really useful here. Maybe find some carbon. DT might just bid to keep those away from Cat.
Yeah, that seems like what's happening here. Cat at this 144,000 in debt can't really afford to push much further, and the chances of carbon aren't even great. There are so many iron tiles around that carbon tile that they're more likely to hit iron.
But sometimes you're just in desperate times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Cat is now.
Carbon surplus, electronic shortage, both running at the same time.
One thing
I assume that's just going to be the game plan.
Yeah. One strategy that I kind of saw that what would have been interesting if DT had also gotten his had got the geothermal borehole before he scrapped out of the patent lab, he could have returned claim on the 2 far geotherms and just generated his power around that. But
so Cat concedes.
Yep. So that's one game to DT. And that was just DT getting in the markets ahead of time and just beating the curve on Cat and then shutting Cat out.
Yeah, Cat on HQ2 just feeling like she had to move into all that steel. She wasn't making the money necessary to be able to shut DT down. So just all the money he got from the reactors let him get through to HQ3 pretty easily. And expansive advantage, getting all these geotherms down is relatively cheap. And it all just kind of comes together to help him pull through from a bit of a shakier start.
Yeah, and I believe Cat now has the right to ask.
Choose IO.
She's choosing IO?
I mean, she hasn't said anything, but it's unlikely that anything else would happen.
Now, she'll be upset if I at her in the Discord, right?
I think she'd be fine with that.
Because this is actually a question to her. Because I remember her doing something with time racers.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and DT has posted the replay. Very good, very good.
Alright, so looks like we're going to have a bit of a break before our next game.
Okay. Very cool. I will just create the room. Because it's just better to go ahead and get that made. Observer.
Everything else looks like in order.
There we go. I could have taken more time on to analyze that, gone through all the charts and graphs.
Yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes. Probably wasn't too much to say about that game.
Other than what we've already said.
Right.
But it'll definitely be interesting on a switch to IO. I haven't seen many IO games. Seems that even the random map type or random map location has sometimes given us more Ceres and Mars than anything else, or at least in my experience.
The series definitely has appeared more often than I would have expected, but earlier today with DT versus Senzar, they had 2 IO games in a series game. So there's been some representation, just thankfully nowhere near me.
Not a fan of IO?
Not so much. I don't know. I just never got enough experience with it.
IO is always kind of a weird relationship for me because I enjoy the scientist faction, and while there is Basalt, the life support market, which scientists excel at on the other locations, just doesn't follow the same pattern here. So it's because of its flip on its head. So it's just a little bit hard to play. I mean, I know you can do free oxygen, but you can never just get down free resource buildings like you could on Mars, and then especially Ceres because of how what is it? Uranium water works or uranium ice. That was always a bunch of fun.
Yeah, there's definitely still a lot of things to like for scientists on IO, but it's harder to find a great place for them. It's probably easier to find a decent founding spot for scientists, though.
I think with scientists, it becomes less about necessarily getting the late game bonuses, but using Basalt to be really flexible in the mid game.
Yeah, and I think in 1v1 especially, the early goon squad can be a big thing if power is an early factor. I've seen Cat pull off things using scientists on IO far more times than I cared for when I was in the opposite position.
And it seems to me that IO likes to do more double tiles than usual, so if you're in the right position as a scientist, you might be able to take advantage of that.
Maybe, yeah. I feel like generally those tiles aren't particularly close to the other things you want to be near as a scientist.
And since there's no teleportation, you run into that issue.
Mm-hmm.
Although it also, I think, really changes around Scavenger, making them more of a late game faction with their non-decreasing base resources, while other factions are suddenly left, struggling to get their basics under control. Scavengers are still just fine. So
that can be true. I mean, the main resources that applies to are carbon and aluminum, which, well, obviously are great for scavenger, but like silicon and everything, you have the basalt that carries that for the most part. I guess nomads are significantly weaker because of silicon. But yeah, aluminum, if the game goes to space elevators, is a huge, huge advantage.
yeah. And I mean, with the aluminum, because of space elevators, that's, again, not decreasing another good advantage for the scavenger. And if you happen to get the transparent aluminum patent, that non-decreasing aluminum just taking care of your glass needs would be nice.
Mhm. Yeah, also just really nice for scavenger, having that easy path into ion collectors early. It can be a big deal.
Yes. Yes, the fuel market on IO is because of how you get garage modules and not habitat modules. That matters. Because you're going to see a lot more power and fuel consumption than the standard life support modules in the other locations will give you.
Always interesting to see exactly how the garages and habitats get split at the beginning. Although I guess there's not a ton of variation. It's probably between 1 and 3.
And I think it also depends on how the map sets up. So if you've got high prices elsewhere, it matters less. If suddenly the market's, a bunch of low prices or maybe only fuel's high, it matters a lot more.
Yeah. The other interesting thing on IO is power. Probably the thing I've never gotten a good handle on.
Basically, my understanding is that unless power's really cheap, nuke plants just do better, even with the input costs.
The input costs are just a lot more awkward on IO because of the water situation being difficult.
Yeah. The
geothermals can be a very nice alternative, but time, distance, and everything can also make that awkward.
Another way is to put up nukes early for that, HQ2, HQ3 power spike. Then grab solar condensers as a pattern, which is still very useful for getting your oxygen, which is critical to get in this game because of how the life support market has flipped. And then that also makes solar panels on all the time. And once solar panels are on all the time, they start to match or come close to nuke plants because you're no longer worried about them shutting on and off and you don't have any inputs with them.
Yeah, I think most of the time, though, you will want an additional power pattern or some optimizations to supplement solar panels just because their base production is relatively low. But we'll see how these players handle it instead. Cat looking for a real map with resources and stuff. Good place to look for that.
You ready, Blues?
Anytime.
All right, countdown beginning. Here we go, into match number 2. Let's see if Kat can get her team out of the bonus.
That's a weird little thing there.
Hey, look, a real map!
There's a lot of empty space on it.
But it's not all mountains.
All the ice is in the northeast, and very little else is in the northeast.
There's a little bit of in the southeast, some ice over there. It's the south. The southwest has 2 tiles of ice.
Yeah, but northwest looks pretty good, though.
Yeah, if you drop a robot or scientist down there, that's cool.
It's the only real area with good carbon.
Little low on the aluminum.
Could maybe see a robot drop down next to the aluminum ice near the double tiles. But on the other hand, steel does start double, so it's going to be really awkward if you try that.
Scientific HQ has been founded.
So 2 scientists. DT is going to start with a low. There are return to claims, so you can kind of get that low to start with. And Cat is going up there She's a little bit farther from everything else, but she gets to start with a very high aluminum. She's a little bit farther from the oxygen, but I think she'll make it.
Looks like both players are just really valuing the early steel production, being able to have the triangle with the high starting price.
Yeah.
So otherwise, yeah, everything is just a little more awkward compared to some of the other spots near them.
Scientific HQ has been upgraded.
Looks like DT is just going to mine up a bunch of uranium.
Yep, gonna be a nice quick hit of money for him, and they should transition pretty easily into nuclear plants. Are already climbing towards 150 there. Cat, in the meantime, has decided to pick up the high carbon tile instead. And also freeze those uranium tiles.
Yeah. I maybe would have liked to see DT found a little more to the south, right next to this 5-tile basalt lake, which still would have left him near high uranium, better access to the ice and to a geotherm tile. It's a little tighter, but given that what he can build on the basalt, I don't think it's that tight.
Right. I think I definitely agree with you there. That spot feels better to me. I do like what Cat did here with grabbing the second aluminum tile. That can be transitioned into a second condenser later once she has enough aluminum, but for the moment, aluminum's staying pretty expensive, and this should also just be really helpful for faster upgrades for her.
Again, if she puts down an early patent lab, which, given that there's perpetual motion and transparent aluminum, could be useful. Apparently, someone has already put superconductor down.
The black market is open for business.
DT knows what he wants.
Well, yeah, if you're going to do all those nuke plants next to your base, that is going to be nice.
He's going to be really happy about Cat bouncing that circuit overload. It does just allow him to throw it right back onto Cat's nuclear plants, which are going up right now.
Although Cat has a protection of her own. Well, here's an interesting idea. Split your nuclear power plants. Only one target works.
Yep. Definitely a bit of a later decision made there. Otherwise, wouldn't have just one nuclear plant built out there. Probably would have built these two first, but it is a much safer decision to do it this way, and it will probably pay off reasonably well for Cat. The one thing that she is lacking is, well, DT's already making power money. He has this patent lab up. Cat cannot get a patent lab of her own down. She has no valid tiles for that, and does just mean that DT can make crazy things happen.
Although she did have the tile advantage for a little bit.
Yep.
And superconductor signals the death of power.
One really nice thing for Cat is that she has significantly better aluminum. DT can build towards the Sea of Lows. So it's not the end of the world for him. But if this game goes long, Cat should be able to get elevators up significantly faster.
DT can return a claim, buy an additional claim, and claim one of the high aluminums near the base. So I think he'll be able to make it just fine, because there's not a absolute shortage of aluminum on the map.
Right, it's just going to be a bit slower for him is all.
Well, he's already taken down his patent lab, didn't even try to get nanotech, but considering the price of chems, I understand why.
Yeah, once his power monies ran out, then it became a lot harder to justify running that. Although I think I would have been interested in trying to get that down anyway. It's so helpful for nuclear plants, for ion collectors. There's so many potentially expensive buildings that you want to move in and out of.
Yeah. Nanotech is just such a good patent. It always has utility.
A new claim is available for option.
So Kat is getting her patent lab down now. Plenty of pads that she'll want. Still transparent aluminum, nanotech down, available. Both patents that Kat is known to like. Curious to see if she'll want to link up her remote claims as well. But in the meantime, 40k for this claim auction for DT.
And knock him down to AA. Certainly seems like a thing, and DT is now going into another metal mine there. And a trifecta of solar condensers.
Bit interesting to me that he's decided to build water processors next to his base and have solar condensers instead of just building the water processors on top of the ice. Doesn't feel like one of those situations where that does make a ton of sense, but it might be fine.
Well, he doesn't want to have to then ship out the fuel, then ship back the water, possibly. It's one of those scientist things where you're like, I need oxygen anyway for multiple things, so I still need solar condensers regardless.
It's just that the production on individual solar condensers is so low that like one water processor consumes a 0 adjacency solar condenser worth of oxygen. It's a bit painful in that sense. And eventually those tiles can be connected up. I don't know if that's part of DT's plan. We'll see later.
And Cat will take nanotech.
Yep. Also just a very nice freeze onto a lot of DT's production.
Yeah. I mean, DT needs to get out of those nuke plants at some point here. There's just more profitable things to make, like water, which will cover your power costs.
Circuit overload finally comes back around and gets bounced. I think that was an intentional bounce. Power is low, and DT had to have known that that would be a goon tile. Cat has picked up another goon squad. Not placing it yet. There's not a strong reason to replace that goon squad there. Steel is good, but not ridiculous, and with EMPs available, there's a very strict limit on how much you can protect.
Cat is keeping her patent train going and picking up perpetual motion, which power will probably creep back up again considering the offices the colony now has, so not a bad pickup there to reduce her power costs in half, especially with the steel that she is making.
Both players also moving into a triangle of farms now. Going to be a bit of a race to see who gets that money before that market just crashes out.
Well, that market is going to stay around a bit longer.
Indeed it is. Cat going for synthetic meat to help try to reverse that. Also, this double optimization center should mean that she's in a strong position to maintain production going forward.
Yep. And she has put down the goon squad to separate sides of her base. I like her position here to really be able to capitalize on things because it's feeling like DT, although not far behind, is a little bit behind the curve here.
Yeah, for sure. He's getting a lot of nice money out of the iron that kept rising through natural shortages. Cat didn't have a great way into that. DT also is now just moving into more steel, gonna get most of that steel money, whereas Cat was prioritizing glass a bit more.
And everybody better have the buildings that they want in place or under construction right now because we're about to get frozen.
Yep. I'm going to assume Cat wants to transition this aluminum mine into another chem lab. And that's not going to be done before the Sulfur Frost hits. So she's going to have 2 single adjacencies chem refineries for a while. That's going to be a bit sad, but she'll live.
Yeah.
This Goon Squatted tile that's empty, probably going to get a advanced building. That'll be a bit sadder.
No, it's going to be an ion collector. And now the Sulfur Frost is in play. The one right next to her base. It's gone, and another slam of that EMP to shut down that side of her base again. So she's just relying on glass, and she's taking down some glass kilns and moving into some basalt platforms.
Yeah,
Not right now. Not quite.
Well, glass was very dead at the time, so some transition out of glass made sense. Losing a little time building isn't the worst thing in the world if your existing buildings were bad anyway.
Well, they were making around 100 a second, so...
Yeah, they're also increasing the oxygen price a bunch, and that helps DT. They're,
Yeah.
I don't know. In any case, both players are now in 2 optimization centers. They're still roughly even on cash. Cat has a lot more of it invested in stock. But long term, the thing I worry about most for DT is that he is on iron tiles and not on basalt. So, whereas Cat has the flexibility to make all these transitions, glass, electronics, basalt platforms, DT is kind of stuck there.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's why the found we talked about earlier down a little south of the Basalt Lake was the kind of our preference there. Or even a little bit to the east where another Basalt Lake next to ice, and there was even some aluminum up there.
One nice thing DT has going for him is that he has a full triangle of chem refineries, whereas Cat's claim configuration is a bit more awkward. A lot of pairs, a lot of lines, not a lot of triangles. DT is going to get a lot of money off of chems, and also going to try to push his chem advantage into just more optimizations. 3rd optimization center coming down is ambitious.
Well, if you're a bit behind, you've got to sometimes be ambitious to get back ahead. Because there's no, like, as in an FFA, where you're kind of sitting at number 2, maybe you let someone else go after number 1, and you just kind of wait out that battle to swoop in and take out the victor after they've, done mutually assured destruction.
To be fair, if you're directing that ambition in the wrong directions, that is only going to make things worse. And space elevators this game are a pretty decent building. Oxygen launches all the way up at 520 already. So that will be something to look at. Neither player has a ton of oxygen. Cat has 2 pairs potentially. DT is stuck with just a triangle, although there are claims on the market. Haven't noticed who's bought them up, but we are at a 10k price. So there has been some amount of buying, even on both sides.
Yeah, and I can just take a moment and check here in charts and graphs to see who's bought what. 2 claims apiece. DT saved a little bit on his getting them for a bit cheaper than Cat, but we'll have to see. So Cat's got a little bit of a lead here in terms of winning the game because of the stock market situation.
She's also ahead on optimizations. Well, they're roughly even on optimizations. Neither of them are keeping their optimization centers running. So it is a little awkward that they have 2 and 3 optimization centers. But I assume they'll be moving again before long. But prices are on their way down. This very high aluminum tile will help with the next phase of what I assume Cat's plan to be, which is just going to be space elevators. That's just where we're headed.
However, DT, I think, is the first to place his, and yep, he's got a space elevator coming out. Neither person has thinking machines yet online, which with mutinies on the market may be a thing.
Goon Popper's also available in the circuit overloads. And yeah,
However, the EMPs are a bit pricey.
The black market is open for business.
I think this might be the point where we start wondering whether Kat maybe invested too much of her lead into stock. Definitely is an advantage for her long term when that stock battle resolves, but in the moment it means that she's not investing that money into earlier elevators, and I'm concerned that maybe that's enough to put her behind in the long game,
Especially
despite the current
because
patent advantage.
she can build those elevators with aluminum.
Profits climb.
I think she may have gotten out of her aluminum a bit early to put other stuff on them.
Starting to put it back down makes a lot of sense. Chems were dead, and once chems are gone, there's no need for that third ion collector anymore. So Cat should have a space elevator before too long, but she will just be behind getting that up.
I mean,
Stop.
if she's feeling cheeky, there are holograms. She could hologram one of her optimization centers at the colony as an optimization center, and then put down an off-world there for. Currently, there's a warehouse module that she can get a little bit faster production on.
Does not look like she's going to opt for that play. It is definitely an option, probably riskier than it needs to be. Cat isn't in a bad position, but
yeah. Another thing that is, if you have holograms right behind, and you're near the forge, right behind the forge, if you can get a tile there, it's generally obscured by the smoke coming out of the forge. And so if you put a hologram on that and put it as something like a mine or something else, something unimportant, it's just visually not seeable on a quick glance.
Not something I ever thought about, but it does make a lot of sense.
It is the smoke screen thing. I never thought about it until I saw it happen, and I was like, "This is genius! No one is going to find this." And no one did, because visually they don't even know it's a tile of their opponents.
At this point, DT does have 2 elevators already up and running. Cat just starting to build her first. She is 180k ahead in stock, so that's roughly 100k behind or ahead. But she'll need to get the second elevator down soon.
Yeah, but 2.5 launches eats that up. So.
One nice thing for Cat, I guess, is that she has her auction optimizations already done. DT's still just slowly working towards those. But that's also just not going to be huge.
Successful space elevator delivery.
Also, in terms of patents, Cat has synthetic meat, nanotech. So there's some other things there. And what's going down? Is she replacing that? She's replacing it as a space elevator, but she's not hiding that it's a space elevator at the colony there.
Yep. That's probably fair. It's once you see that second optimization center disappear, there's nothing you could realistically hide this as with the hologram price increasing as well. That would be convincing.
Yeah. Especially in a 1v1, because it's an FFA you don't quite know. The trick is you have to think about it in advance. You have to buy it and not do anything with it for a minute. So everyone goes, okay, what happened here? And can't find out what happened.
So Cat rebuilding a patent lab, going for liquid batteries. Makes a lot of sense with this oxygen launch. does make me wonder if that's something that could have been done earlier when she already had the patent lab. But
she at least got to scrap out of it getting all her supplies back, so... So it wasn't like it...
Right. I believe the timing on that, though, was like right before the sulfur frost. So the tile ended up sitting empty for a while and then building really slowly. I think there's an opportunity to get that done. Although that might have been before the sulfur frost announcement. I don't remember.
I think it was before the sulfur frost.
Either way, liquid batteries finishing real soon. That will be a nice advantage to Cat. And she will need it because she is very close to getting bought out. DT just finishing 2 launches. Cat's going to get 2 of her own. She paid off all her debt, though, so she's less close to this buy than she'd like to be. What is the timing on these launches? 40 seconds apiece for DT. Cat has canceled her launches. She's trying to nanotech her way through this, but that's not going to work.
She's not... Yeah, you need to be a little bit closer for nanotech to give you that edge.
Or I guess maybe not even trying to nanotech it. She had spies on one of the elevators, and I think she knew the timing of the other based on when DT's cash spiked. So if she knows she's not going to beat DT to either of the launches, then canceling makes sense. Just try to get there as quickly as possible, but she doesn't look like she's going to make it. DT should pull this out just barely.
Yep, and there's the win. For 2 DT wins in a row. Oh, that was a good close game there.
Yeah, just some very tiny things could have swung things a bit. Maybe if Cat had gone for the elevator at the colony before the one at her HQ, that could have done something. These are all minor things. In hindsight, I have no idea what would have been right.
Well, when you get to things that are that close, sometimes it does matter, hindsight of those little those little things. But yeah, it was quite a game there. Cat definitely had the lead in optimizations, patents, but coming down to the off-worlds at the end, DT is making a little over 600K in off-worlds as his biggest moneymaker, whereas Cat's is about 236 in steel. Looking at
the end, I think a lot of what happened here is that Cat space is just configured in this way that it was much harder for her to transition in and out of the aluminum as she would have liked. She claimed a ton of aluminum tiles, more or less planning to be able to get into them. But chems were such a strong market for so long that she needed to test those, which means she needed the fuel, which means and on. So it's just hard to work with that.
She had a weird base, whereas DT had a more standard base with a lot more triangles.
Mm-hmm. And despite not having the basalt, that actually maybe ends up as a bit of a benefit in this case, because the colony is not consuming very much glass and no electronics. The silicon-based markets didn't really rise a ton, so you can get away without having that. And it also just means he has more tiles that he can move around that aren't forced to be basalt-based buildings.
Fair.
I guess the other thing that's going on is that Cat has 6 solar condensers, which did a lot of work for her, but also just made it harder for her to get the elevator transition done.
Yeah. Because, not near the ice. Had to take pairs away.
I probably assume like the last pair of condensers was off-bought claims or something. I don't recall them being down very early. Either way, it's a very solid game from both players. Small things here and there.
Definitely got to the end game there with everyone having max elevators, so it was good. And from what it sounds like, that may be DT's last matches for the tournament, since he said after this weekend he's a bit done.
Yeah, pretty much out of time for this tournament anyway. Ending at the end of April is my
Few more
recollection.
days. There could be no saying that there couldn't be an Einhorn comeback. However, DT has given a strong lead to the Phoenixes.
And all the way up to an 8.5 point lead at this point.
Yeah.
Which will take quite a few games to overcome. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for joining. It was great to have your insight into this game.
Yep. It's good to watch these games. Nice, interesting games. Memories of what well played off-world looks like.
Well, and to all my viewers, thank you for joining me, and be seeing you.